Hello, Internet. Welcome to Fantasy Football Fiesta. My name is Tarnell Mims. And you're now tuned in to the best fantasy football on the web with chips. I'm your host, and to my left, I've got Aaron Dion. Aaron, you want to say some stuff to the people?
What's up, Internet? My name is Aaron Dion. Just wanted to say hello. Welcome to Fantasy Football Fiesta. This is going to be a weekly live podcast that we're doing on YouTube. We're doing live on our website at fantasyfootballfiesta.com. You can turn in there. Tune in one of those two places. You can find us on iTunes later. You can find our RSS feed. Hopefully you just find us. We're hoping to find an audience. We're hoping that you enjoy listening to us. Like I said, my name is Aaron Dion. I am not a professional analyst. I'm just a guy that loves the game. I love my team. I'm a Denver Broncos fan, obviously, if you didn't pick that up. I was just born just outside Denver. I've been a Broncos fan my entire life. I grew up watching Elway lose Super Bowls, and then when he finally got one, I was all in. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @ABowlOfAaron. Make sure you include the A Bowl of Aaron. You can see it right there in my little handle. And looking forward to having you along. Hopefully this is fun.
All right, now we got our other co-host here, Jason.
Hello, Internet.
You're on, Jason.
Hello. I am the token Charger fan, born and raised San Diego, baby. And you can find me on Twitter at SDChargerFan96. Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Fiesta. Let's roll. Let's get some chips and dip, and let's take some shots.
All right, and with that, forgot. My Twitter handle for Tarnell is something off the realm. That's all right. ABO Alpha Supreme. ABO Alpha Supreme. That's all one word. And we'll start this off with a shot. You ready, gentlemen?
I'm ready.
All right.
Here's to starting this football season off right.
All right, cheers. Excellent. All right, so first off will be some news. Patriots, the rich keep getting richer. They signed veteran Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne's comment on why he signed with the Pats was simply, I just want to win. Now, we can take that as a slight to the Colts and Andrew Luck, or is him just being better they didn't re-sign him and keep him. I don't know if that's shot at Manning, or if he literally just thinks that the Patriots have the best legitimate shot at winning. And they're probably the only people that took him. Let's see, what else do we have as far as signings? Oh, we have another signing in Denver with a guard. We'll let our senior Broncos correspondent, Aaron, handle that one. Aaron?
Oh, thanks. And I appreciate my new title, Senior Broncos Correspondent. And I'll tell you, Tarnell, I'm actually really excited about this signing. When John called me earlier today to make sure I was cool with it, I definitely gave it the thumbs up. Personally, I'm a big fan of mixing veteran and rookie talent, or veteran and newbie talent, not necessarily rookies. I like putting the seasoned guys next to the rookie guys. And one thing as a Broncos fan that had been concerning me going into this year, which definitely has fantasy implications, is the entire left side of the line was all rookies. We lost our left tackle to an injury. Left guard and center has been rookies. They've been performing pretty well, but as a Bronco fan and a fantasy fan, that makes me more than a little nervous. So adding a Pro Bowl veteran to the mix right there in the middle of two rookies, I think that's really amazing. Mathis was a Pro Bowler in 2013. He was an All-Pro. We got Vasquez as a guard on the right side. He's a Pro Bowler too. So I really think it's going to be good, not only necessarily from just a production and an output standpoint, but from teaching some of these young guys the ropes and really getting them into what it takes to be, a top-notch professional in this league. So I'm excited. It was good news for me.
All right, that's good stuff. All right, next up we have a couple of injuries. One of the key injuries out there is for the Panthers, Kelvin Benjamin. What do you think that does for Cam Newton and his squad? To me, personally, I feel that it just makes Cam Newton have to work that much harder. And I don't really see him having that productive a year without using a lot of his legs. Jason, do you have any thing further to add to that one?
I mean, losing Benjamin's going to be a huge blow on the team. Big target. I think he was 6'7". So losing him for the year is definitely going to be a tough loss for the Panthers. I think they're going to have to work on their run game a little bit more. They're going to be using their slot receivers. So I think it's definitely a big loss for them. Hopefully they can come up with it, and I think Cam Newton is definitely going to have to up his game.
Yeah, and I think they were already going to be struggling at the wide receiver position. Kelvin Benjamin was a second-year guy. He had a great rookie season, don't get me wrong. I mean, Kelvin Benjamin was actually on one of my fantasy teams last year. I picked him up way late. May have even been a waiver wire pickup. But he was fantastic through the stretch. But I don't really think that they had a super strong wide receiver lineup going into this. Sophomore slump is the thing. The league can start to react to these guys that suddenly emerge, so he's going to start drawing the double covers. And before he even went out, I think there was a problem. Him being out of the season completely, I think that's a major issue for them. I think their entire game suffers because of it. And unless somebody steps up big time, I think they're going to have struggles not only from a fantasy standpoint, but from just a football standpoint. I think they're going to struggle to win games.
Excellent analysis there. All right, the last and probably, well, I wouldn't say it is the last of the most important injuries. Of course, the whole fantasy world and the Packer world is reeling from is the loss of Jordy Nelson for the entire year. Now, most people think the Packers are ruined. Well, they're wondering if the Packers are ruined and what they do. And now a lot of people are scrambling that drafted early on what they should do fantasy-wise, now that they lost Jordy Nelson. But I would say, fear not. The one thing that wide receivers have a lot of depth at is wide receiver. And right now we've got Devontae Adams, the second-year guy, stepping up. If you don't know who he is, go take a look at his highlight reel. He was very impressive last year. He actually had a great touchdown run in the Cowboy game in the playoffs. He completely juked one of their DBs in the middle of the field and ran in for a touchdown. So he's good. He was a nice second-round draft pick last year. He'll be stepping up. They've already named Ty Montgomery as the number 3 guy. If they have a bunch of other people also in the wings, if worse comes to worse and they get dropped, these other guys get cut. They used to be on the squad. You've got Jared Boykin and James Jones. They already know the system, and if worse comes to worse, they need those guys get cut and they need receivers. They'll just bring them back. And Rodgers has trust in all of those guys, so there's really nothing to worry about as far as the Packers are concerned. And as far as fantasy, if they're a wide receiver and they're in Green Bay, they should be worth grabbing.
Yeah, Tarnell. I mean, just to add on that, I think that Aaron Rodgers is definitely one of those quarterbacks, and there are a few of them that can make any receiving core a great receiving core. He just happens to have great receivers on the team. Jordy Nelson's going to be a huge loss for the team, but you won't even see him skip a beat. They have great receivers. They have speed on the outside, and again, he's a quarterback that can definitely up his game and make any receiving core or running back core up their game and make them a lot better than what they actually are.
Yeah, no, in my opinion, I tend to agree with you guys. Green Bay has an amazing offense. They were the number 1 offense going into this season, I think, indisputed. Losing Jordy Nelson, I think, is a major hit. That guy was a major talent for the team. I don't think it has a major impact for them from a football standpoint. I think they're going to adjust, and I think they're going to be just fine going into the season. I think they're still the front runners to win the division. From a fantasy standpoint, I think it does make some adjustments as we're going into the draft, especially if you haven't drafted yet. I think you need to take that into account. Obviously, Jordy Nelson's off the board, so that's front and center. But I think it, from a production standpoint, I think it potentially stands to diminish the returns of Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to adjust. I think he's going to be just fine. But I don't think he's the number 1. Personally, I had him as my number 1 quarterback going into this. Losing his top target, I think he drops to number 2. From a football standpoint, that's not a big deal, but when I'm drafting, I'm not necessarily looking at him in the second round anymore. So I may be looking at him towards the end of the third round. If he's still there, I might grab him. But I think they had such a chemistry that I really think that from an output standpoint from fantasy, I think there's a little bit of a hit to be taken there. I also think they may end up leaning a little bit more on their running game. So I think Eddie Lacy may take a little bit of a boost. He's already number 1 in some rankings, so it's hard to go anywhere from there.
I was going to say just that. I don't know how much of a change it's going to be because Lacy was already most lists have him as the number 1. It's almost like he's a unanimous number 1. So I don't know how much more number 1 he's going to be. Roger, the thing is with Green Bay, they've always been the backwards team. Most teams use their run to set up the pass. They use their pass to set up the run. I mean, they're strike first. I mean, they just got Eddie Lacy as part of their run game. And before they used to strike, all they were was a strike team. They were air. You knew they were going to the air, and they beat you anyways. Now, Jordy Nelson was a big part of that, but nothing's changing. The way Ted Thompson drafts for personnel, he drafts for the system. And I think any one of those guys, they're not going to be the same as Nelson, but most people look at, and I kind of tend to agree that Devontae Adams is Anquan Bolden 2.0. He's very strong. If you watch him, every time he catches the ball, his first instinct is to protect. So you're not going to get a lot of fumbles, even though he's a second-year guy. Ty Montgomery, rookie, we're not sure, but I mean, if they're willing to put him at number 3, they obviously saw something in him at camp. So I mean, I think Rodgers, he still likes to throw. He's getting a better rapport with his tight end, Richard Rodgers. So you've got Richard Rodgers, Andrew Corliss is still there. You've got 3 wide receivers. I'm pretty sure he's still going to use his damn arm. It's going to be hard to sit there and look at that guy unless they're facing a tough defense and think he's going to hand off more time just because Nelson's not there. He's going to have to try and build some rapport with some people. Now, speaking of tight ends, as I just mentioned, Richard Rodgers, what do you guys feel on tight end relevancy? Excuse me. Is a tight end outside of, let's say, Gronk and Jimmy Graham, how many tight ends out there are worth a high draft pick? Let's say, would you skip all your QBs and make sure you got all your tight ends first with, as far as draft strategy goes? Would you go running back, wide receiver, and get those filled up, and then go tight end, and then pass on a QB? Like, how many QBs, how many tight ends are out there outside of those top 2 guys that are relevant enough to warrant let's say around 7, 8, or 9 pick?
Now, I would say there's a couple other guys in the conversation. I mean, obviously Gronkowski and Graham are your number 1s and 2s. Now, I think there's a conversation to be had about Graham's production in Seattle. He's in a new environment. He's in a new system, new coach, new city, new everything. So I don't necessarily know that we can count on the same level of production out of Graham that we were used to receiving from him in New Orleans. But obviously the guy's an amazing talent. So any team he's going to be on, I got to imagine that the priority is going to be feed that dude the ball, because that dude's going to catch the ball, especially when you get into the red zone. I mean, you saw the Super Bowl, the way that ended. I feel like Jimmy Graham on that team, that Super Bowl, they ended a little differently. But that's all in the past. We're looking forward. I really think that the conversation around Jimmy Graham, I think, is interesting. As far as other guys you may target before those later rounds, I do think there's maybe one other guy you may want to look at, and that's Travis Kelce on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that he kind of has what it looks like to be kind of like a junior baby Gronk. And I think I would look at him kind of towards that round 4. I think he's going to get a ton of targets. I think he's going to get, he's a 1,000-yard guy. I can almost assure you going into this year, obviously injury barring. But I think Travis Kelce is somebody that I would look at in, as you're getting towards the late fourth round and you're kind of debating between a wide receiver 2 or, maybe an RB3 flex option. I think Travis Kelce may be somebody that's sitting there that you may want to target because I think he may be one of, a couple 3 guys that are really generating some points at the tight end position.
Yeah, I think, the tight end talk, Gronk and Jimmy Graham are the elite tight ends. Let's not get it mixed up. There could be some sleepers mixed in there, but this isn't 4 or 5 years ago when we had Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, Jimmy Graham. We had all these tight ends.
Aaron who?
Woo! I said it, but hey, I got caught touchdown.
Yeah, blam.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
He was a killer.
Oh, he was. He was shooting defenses in the face.
But yeah,
Too soon?
4 or 5 years ago, you needed to draft a tight end. They gave you 10 touchdowns. They gave you 800 yards. They were a factor in fantasy football. You can draft them before your third running back. You can draft them before maybe even a quarterback. Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham and Gates and all these people, they were late 1s, early 2s as far as the round for the fantasy football draft. Relevant this year, and might be for the next, maybe this year only. It's just going to be those 2, and then we're going to find out who's going to be the next one to step up. Aaron mentioned Kelce. That's definitely someone I think that is going to step up. I also think Greg Olsen for Carolina. Kelvin Benjamin.
Are either of those 2 a top 50 pick?
Yeah, I would say both.
Yeah, it'll be
50.
It'll be in the 40s. You know what I mean? It's or 50s. I'm not looking at drafting them until 5th round, 6th round.
Yeah, you're starting to look at the edge when it comes to those numbers, top 40, top 50 pick. I think I would start looking at those guys towards the end of the 4th, beginning of the 5th, which is kind of right that realm where you're talking about, because you're going to be looking at a bunch of wide receiver 2s at that area. So those guys have the potential to put up a ton of points, especially Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen, the conversation going back to the Kelvin Benjamin injury, I think his stock goes up. Because Greg Olsen, he was already kind of an emergency release valve for Cam Newton, and now that he doesn't have his number 1 receiver, I think Greg Olsen actually stands to move, I don't know, above Kelce, but
right on par.
Yeah, I think it takes him on par with Kelce, where before he was underneath him. And I would say they're both kind of top targets on their team, unless somebody else shows up and says otherwise. So I would definitely consider those 2 considerations in those rounds. Outside of those 4,
I'll give you one more.
You got another one?
You ready?
Yeah, hit me with it.
And this one is going to be in between our 2 elites and those 2 we just spoke of. Martellus Bennett from Chicago Bears. This guy is going to come up with, he's going to have 9-10 touchdowns. He's going to have 800 yards. Chicago's needing that other receiver. There's definitely someone that Jay Cutler is going to be chased all around. He's going to look for that blanket, and he's going to look for Martellus Bennett. Look for him, tight end, to take over as probably the number 2 receiver on that team. So look out for Martellus Bennett.
I don't know about the Martellus Bennett thing. Chicago's a notorious group of underachievers. I guess he will see more touches because, Brandon Marshall's gone out of town, and then all there really is Alshon Jeffries. So, out of being, I guess, the number 2 option, yes, but I don't know. I'm just not seeing. That's just such a dismal offense. So ultimately, I don't know how much they're really going to get out of them this year. Last year, on paper, everyone looked at the Chicago Bears offense was like, holy shit, these guys are going to kill it. Because on paper, they were like, they should have been putting up like 28, 30-plus points a game. And they performed horribly underwhelmingly in that respect. So I don't, I have Martellus Bennett actually on both of my fantasy squads, and a lot of times he did okay, and sometimes I'm like, shit, I should have went with Charles Clay this week. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, Martellus Bennett. I think once you get out of the realm of the four that you guys mentioned, I think everyone else is kind of a crapshoot. Outside of maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know what Ladarius Green's going to be. Like, if Rivers is going to trust him like the way he trusts Gates, because Gates is going to be gone for at least 4 games, and even if he comes back, who knows if he gets another foot injury?
I mean,
so
Ladarius.
I don't know. So I mean,
playing with no foot.
Right. So I mean, he'll probably be in there a lot, but I mean, is Ladarius Green going to really step up and be somebody? It's one of those things where we're going to have to see once we get into, once we get deeper into the season. But I don't know about as far as, as drafting. I don't know. I mean, that's probably maybe everyone else is like a number 2, and everyone else is just taking a risk.
Yeah, and you're basically, if you're looking at anybody, the Martellus Bennett question, I think I don't know. This is the classic dilemma when it comes to fantasy football. How much weight do you give last season going into next season? Because history tends to show that there's not much correlation. You go into a new season, everything resets, and things are completely different. Chicago's got a new coach. They've got a new system. They've got new personnel. There's no telling. I think Martellus Bennett is a solid option to look at tight end. I'm personally not looking at him in those early mid-rounds, 4 or 5. If I miss out on the 4 that we already talked about, I'm not looking at Martellus Bennett to grab because tight ends are going. Because I think he's in that sub-tier. I think once you get to that level, there's going to be a bunch of tight ends later in the draft. They're going to be just fine. You've got guys like Heath Miller. You've got guys like Jason Witten. They're going to be all right. They're going to put up 700 yards. They're going to get a bunch of catches. They're going to get 3-4 touchdowns. And you can't necessarily count on them to be super studs, but they're not going to completely shit the bed on you every week. They're going to put up a few yards. They're going to get several catches, especially in PPR leagues. I think you're going to be all right with those kind of guys. But I think once you get past maybe Martellus Bennett, I think you're really looking at drafting way at the end of the draft. And I think guys like Ladarius Green have a lot of upside. I have him on my list as potential sleepers to kind of keep an eye on. But I think he's my very last pick more often than not. So it's from a fantasy standpoint, I think once you get past those first few guys, I think you can wait.
Interesting. Yeah. Real quick on the Jimmy Graham thing, I want to move back a few minutes, which is back in time, to the Jimmy Graham conversation. How do you think Seattle adjusts their game plan as far as how will that affect the way Russell Wilson plays and also what the touches they give Marshawn Lynch? Like, is he no longer the go-to guy because they have Graham? Is that going to drop Marshawn Lynch's stock? Are they really going to push towards Graham as the end zone guy and just continue the trend that they have from the Super Bowl? They'll use Marshawn to get him down there and Graham to punch it in?
Yeah, I think that they're going to utilize Jimmy Graham a lot. It's hard to tell because it's a new system. He's an All-Pro. He's proven himself. But Seattle's stuck in their ways. They have a system they've ran for years. It all goes through Marshawn Lynch. Between Wilson and Lynch, it's their show. Jimmy Graham's going to get his catches. It's not going to be like you've seen in New Orleans. He's going to get some touchdowns. I think it's going to be a drop. I think he's probably going to get about 600-700 yards. He's probably going to have 5, 6, maybe 7 touchdowns. If Marshawn Lynch is a touchdown vulture, he takes them all if they're anywhere near the 10-yard line. He's the one who's going to be taking it in.
Except for in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Believe me, that's never going to happen again.
We'll see.
yeah, exactly. Until he just doesn't want to say anything anymore.
Hey, guys. I just got an alert right now.
Oh, what is that?
From the internet. We got to love the internet. Dallas Cowboys just lost Orlando Scandrick for the year. Torn ACL. Second-team All-Pro cornerback.
Ooh.
Yeah. I just saw that one in, so we'll see. We'll see how that affects
we broke it
them
here
and their
first
defense.
or second. We broke it here second,
Maybe.
guys.
You heard it here.
Maybe
on
we
that.
did break it. We kind of broke it live second, so yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that anybody was looking for big things out of Dallas's defense, so I don't know that adjusts anything on my my strategy.
I mean, and then again, it's back to the next man up scenario where who knows who replaces Kendrick? Maybe that guy has something to prove and it actually benefits their defense. I mean, Kendrick's been around for a minute. He's a seasoned vet, so I mean, we don't know exactly what'll actually come of that. The next question, actually, I have moving from that is, who are guys you can wait on? Do we have anybody like in the draft as far as who can you sit there and just wait till the end of the draft to get like right before your kicker and your defense?
So, are you asking about sleepers in general, or are you talking like positionally, draft strategy?
I would
Clarify
say,
maybe a little bit there.
Well, wide receivers and tight ends. Are there any of those that you would think you can? Let's push it, I guess, to sleepers from a couple of positions. Let's go with sleepers for wide receivers and tight ends. Is there anybody you can draft right before your kicker and defense that'll just really help a lot of guys, help some people out there that are looking for some sleepers when they really don't know who to grab?
Well, I would tend to think that from a wide receiver standpoint, the pool is so deep that it's almost like you're looking at you've got just a huge array of guys to choose from. The problem really is, and this is what makes fantasy football so great, is going into the season we really don't know how some of these guys are going to perform. Everything changes. From a wide receiver and tight end standpoint, I hesitate being a little bit of a homer. I think Cody Latimer on my list is a wide receiver that I think is being really well underlooked. I think that he's potentially going to have the wide receiver 2 duties in Denver, just based on what I'm seeing and when I talk to John Elway on the phone every day. But I really think that Cody Latimer, he's a second-year guy, and I think he's going to start getting a lot of that work. And he's basically not even in consideration when we get towards the end there. So I think he's somebody to look at if you're looking for somebody to target. If you're looking positionally, guys that you can wait on, I think the tight end and wide receiver, like you said, is definitely there's a huge pool when you get to the end of the draft. So if you're looking to stock up on your running backs early, running backs are a slim commodity in the NFL right now, especially the guys that are getting the workload. So I would say if you're looking to load up on those guys early, you grab your quarterback. You can wait on your tight ends, and you can wait on your wide receivers, and I think there's a lot of guys there at the end. One guy on the tight end conversation that
Aaron's cutting out there, Tornado.
Really, am I cutting out again? That I'm going to stab myself. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you now. Here you go.
Okay. So one guy that I think you can wait on that's being completely overlooked in the draft is Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis, the tight end for the 49ers. He's almost a complete afterthought right now. He had like one game last year that he put in 2 touchdowns, and then he completely vanished. I don't know if he had an argument over a girlfriend with, Kaepernick. I don't know what happened, but he just completely vanished off the radar early last year. And I think he's somebody that's worth looking at.
Oh, man.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, so you're saying, you broke up again in the middle of your rant.
Yeah.
So you're saying Vernon Davis basically had a few games last year where he was pretty damn effective, and you think he still might be effective, and maybe he is because of our conversation last week of San Francisco and what the hell do they have to offer.
Right, and
That's
he had
probably
like
one of
one
the people
game
that
that he was amazing, and then he completely fell off the radar. So I don't know what happened with him. I don't know if there was injuries or I don't know what the deal was, but he's healthy. He's good to go now, and I think he's somebody that's worth targeting in those later rounds because who knows? You kind of are just taking a
maybe
flyer on these guys.
he might be.
You know,
He used to be like a guy you would look at in the second and third round, and all of a sudden he's completely off the radar.
Oh yeah.
it's like I said.
Well, I mean, you gotta also think age. I mean, he's not any spring chicken. I mean, football is definitely a young man's game. There's not many that are still that dude year after year after year. I mean, outside of I know Adrian Peterson's a freak of nature, and for some reason he's still good, even though he broke himself, and then has a 2,000-yard season. But I mean, I don't know how many people can actually keep that going. So yeah, some of the guys that we're used to hearing probably won't be that guy anymore. They'll probably be more the 2 and the 3rd option and the flex guy versus your starter, your main stud.
Yeah, I think.
Any other sleepers we got there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I said before, tight ends aren't the same as they were 4 or 5 years ago. Tight ends are a position. If you don't hit one of those 2 or 3 or 4 that we talked about earlier, you can wait till the very end. You can pick up a tight end that'll give you decent numbers because bottom of the barrel is going to be pretty deep for tight end position this year. For example, you can look at Austin Seferian-Jenkins or Benjamin Watson. Players like that. They're going to give you decent yards. They'll give you decent points, especially in a PPR league. But they're going to be a bottom of the barrel type players when it comes to the draft. Wide receivers. There are so many wide receivers. A lot of these older wide receivers are being drafted way at the end. The Roddy Whites, the Michael Floyds, Marquez Colston. They're being overlooked, and they're just players that are just waiting till the very end of the draft. Maybe not right before kicker and defense, but they're in the 12th, 13th, 14th round, and you can pick these guys up, and they'll give you decent numbers. So the wide receiver pool is definitely a big pool. And tight ends, you can pick up a tight end, your starting tight end, right before defense and kicker, and you should be fine.
All right.
I completely agree.
Rounds 12, 13, 14 typically is right before kicker and defense.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I don't know how many people you have on your depth chart in your leagues, but
Right.
12, 13, 14 is the right before the last 2 picks. Our
46
draft
people on my
master
team.
Jason in the house, everybody.
He's good at math sometimes. One other guy that's not getting a lot of talk this year, and I kind of alluded to, I'm really hot on the Miami offense this year, but Jordan Cameron, he's got a ton of talent. I think he can really be a really solid tight end in the fantasy game. He was on the Browns last year. He's moved over to the Dolphins. I think he's somebody worth targeting, and he's going to be there real late, if drafted at all. So I think he's somebody that's worth taking a flyer on late. He could even be your tight end 1, in theory. It's kind of hard to do that with no resume to back it up. But if you're looking for, those really late round guys and you're just looking for somebody to take a flyer on, I think Jordan Cameron's going to be there, and I think he stands to put up a bunch of numbers in Miami, assuming he stays healthy. And,
yeah, he was okay in Cleveland with Hoyer at the helm. So, I mean, I guess Cameron is a guy that kind of in that close to that Martellus Bennett area.
Another person, just real quick, is Dwayne Allen, Indianapolis. He's another guy that you could pick up really late in the draft. Round 10, 11. And he'll give you solid numbers. Andrew Luck loves to go to tight ends. If he's flushed out of the pocket, he'll find them. And Andrew Luck's one of those quarterbacks. I mean, he's an elite quarterback. He's going to be finding the wide open person. Dwayne Allen gets the separation from a linebacker. You're definitely going to see him get his catches, and he's going to get his touchdowns for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Tardell, are you looking to kind of keep this conversation isolated to tight ends and wide receivers, or are we looking kind of at anybody that you can wait to?
Well, next week I think we'll touch on the other guy, the other main two, which would be running backs and QBs.
Okay,
and
so I've got a couple other thoughts there, so we'll wait for next week. Tune in next Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
So right now I'd like to go to a nice little segment I've prepared, which would be as it stands today. Now we'll be doing this throughout the whole season. And a lot of times you always hear, especially later on in the season, is as it stands today, who is the top this, who is the top that, who would be in the playoffs, who's not in the playoffs. But we'll take other quirky and awkward angles at the league and look at it from as it stands today. So, what I wanted to do as it stands today with these enormous rosters, we're going to go look at what could be a bad draft strategy, typically a bad draft strategy, which is being a homer. Some guys are just, they like drafting their team. They want their team all in their, filling up their starting board. So, if you have like 4 or 5 guys from your favorite your team on your roster, who would be in the AFC and NFC? Who are the top teams that you could actually draft as a homer and still have a kind of a successful team to some degree? Jason, let's go to you first. What do you have there?
All right, so I got the NFC, and it's hard to find. If you're a homer, it's hard to find teams that you can use almost every player in every position and actually be a pretty successful team. But there are 2 that came to mind in the NFC. They're always in the NFC Championship game. They're always deep in the playoffs. One is your beloved Green Bay Packers. I mean, look at this roster. Aaron Rodgers, elite. Eddie Lacy, elite. Jordy Nelson was there. Randall Cobb is going to be moved into elite status. He's going to get his touches. You already mentioned Devontae Adams. I mean, Richard Rodgers and Andrew Corliss for tight end. These people are going to be bringing it up. These you're going to have.
Don't forget about that D.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Crosby at kicker. I mean, I can use this team from quarterback to kicker, and I think I can be 500 at least 500 in fantasy football. I mean, all these Pro Bowlers. There's 3 Pro Bowlers that I see. Aaron Rodgers is going to the Pro Bowl. He's going to have elite numbers. Eddie Lacy is going to go to the Pro Bowl. I can see Randall Cobb going to the Pro Bowl. I mean, these are great players on this team. So this squad, for sure, you could be a homer and be pretty happy with your stats as your fantasy football team if you were to draft just Green Bay Packers. My second one is Seattle Seahawks. I mean, this team is loaded. Russell Wilson at quarterback, he's going to get his rushing yards. He's going to get his passing yards. He's one of those semi-elite quarterbacks. You can pick him up and he'll give you decent numbers. Marshawn Lynch, number 1, number 2 pick overall. He's going to get you touchdowns like crazy. He's going to get you yards every year. The receiving core, not well known, but they get their catches. I mean, these guys, if you're in a PPR league, Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse, these people are going to get 70 catches, 60 catches. Pretty good starting. And then you have Jimmy Graham at tight end. And he's the one that's going to pick up the slack that the wide receivers may have. And they're the one, he could possibly get 10 touchdowns. His performance might be dropping off a little bit. His catches might drop off a little bit, but I still think he's going to have a great season. Their defense, people are drafting their defense in the 5th round, 4th round. I've seen 3rd round. And Stephen Hauschka rounding out kicking. He's going to be a solid person, get you, top 5, top 10 members in the league. So those 2 teams, for sure. If you're a homer, you want to draft a team, pick Green Bay or pick Seattle.
Good. Another comment I would add to that as far as Seattle is concerned, the good thing about Russell Wilson is he's pretty headstrong. That guy, even if he doesn't put up numbers in the game, he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. It's rare that you'll see him throw a lot of interceptions or fumble. He's pretty good at that, and the one thing that kills your fantasy team more than anything is when you get fumbles and interceptions from your QB. Because it's hard for QBs to come by with points anyways because it takes so much for them to, and yardage or production, to actually come up, especially if they don't have, they don't get any touchdowns and they're just trying to gain yards. It takes a lot to get the high stats on a QB. So the moment you get an interception, it's going to kill you. Even if you get 75 yards, you're down to 1 point if they throw an interception, and he doesn't do that a whole lot. So Russell Wilson is a very good pickup. Aaron, how say you, sir?
Well, if we're in a conversation on the NFC, I'm actually a little bit surprised to hear that Seattle was the pick at number 2. You gave us this task, so I'm looking at the AFC, but I was expecting to hear 2 teams coming out of the NFC, and I was a little surprised to hear that the NFC had Seattle as the number 2, because I kind of liked Philadelphia. If you're looking at the homer teams, I think Sam Bradford is an adequate quarterback. He's been injured a lot, but I think he's really good. I think DeMarco Murray is a solid running back. I think he was amazing. I think Jordan Matthews and their wide receiver cores are good. I think Brent Selleck and Zach Ertz at tight end are good, and I think their defense is going to be good. And I was kind of expecting to hear that Philadelphia was going to be the team that we were kind of looking at from, because the conversation almost becomes who has the strongest offense when it comes to fantasy relevance. And I was kind of expecting to hear Philly as the number 2 and Seattle as the number 3. But in thinking about it, I mean, Russell Wilson, your quarterback is kind of the leader of the team, and I would definitely give the ball to Russell Wilson over Sam Bradford. So from looking at it from that standpoint, it's hard to disagree, when you're looking at it like that. But I think all 3 teams are in the mix. Green Bay is the clear number 1 with or without Jordy Nelson. I think Seattle has an amazing offense. I'm really still kind of angry at them, so maybe that's kind of fueling a little bit of my hate. But I think Philly's I think Philly's a team to look at from a team standpoint, especially just the way they run their offense. I think they spread the ball around, and I think there's a lot of points being distributed there. I don't know necessarily that it all ends up on the same guy, especially with Sam Bradford. History has shown he's made of glass, so we'll see if he stays healthy.
Did you have anything from the AFC?
Yeah, on the AFC side, I did my research. So on the AFC side,
let's hear this one.
Yeah,
yeah.
You asked what I thought about the NFC side, so I gave you my thoughts on that. On the AFC side, I did my homework. I think there was a clear number 1. I think on the AFC side, the clear number 1 is the Steelers. You look at the rankings. You look at just kind of the way fantasy rolls out, and they have arguably the number 1 running back in the league, in Le'Veon Bell. Even missing 2 games because of the suspension, he's still looked at in a lot of rankings as the number 1 RB in the league, and that's hard to overlook. They've got the number 1 wide receiver in the league, and I think that's almost unanimous. I didn't look through everything, but I think their wide receiver there, I think is dude's just amazing. So it's hard to overlook that. The quarterback play is excellent. Ben Roethlisberger is an amazing quarterback. Their tight end position
6 touchdowns in 1 game.
That's Al Bundy plus 2. So
yeah, exactly. Man, their number 2 wide receiver is not bad either. Martavius Bryant is pretty solid. That's a good pickup.
Yeah, especially when they've got the number 1 wide receiver on the other side. So you've got defenses that are key to stopping this dude, and you got this other guy going in the back door, and I think that's a dangerous combination. Hey.
Let's hear that number 2.
We're keeping it real. Number 2.
Oh, wait, hold on. What about the Steelers D? Is that worth dropping in? Or are they the same? They're just not the same Steelers as before? Brian Shazier getting better at linebacker?
I don't think they're going to be the same as they were before. They don't have Palomalu. They don't have, I don't think they're going to be as explosive and dangerous as they were before. But I think they're going to be solid. I don't think they're necessarily a team that you would overlook. But I don't necessarily see their defense as the powerhouse that it was before. I really think on the offensive side of the ball is where you see most of the points there. But I don't see anybody drafting the Steelers defense and being, super pissed off about it. I don't see them putting up negative points in consecutive games and that kind of things. But defenses are a little bit sketchy, and it's matchup dependent, so it's hard to say. But they don't have the firepower that they did before, so they're no longer like the clear number 1 that they were a few years ago. But I wouldn't necessarily be worried about them very much either. So from the standpoint of this task and looking at the teams they're off the best. I think their defense may be, their weakest, second to weakest part of their lineup, but I think it's still all right.
Yeah. Who's your number 2?
Number 2, now this is where I struggled. Because I really want to approach this podcast from, I'm obviously wearing my orange. I fucking love the Broncos. But I want to kind of approach this from, kind of neutral from perspective, and I want to keep a level head about it. But on the number 2 side, it's hard to overlook.
Yeah, well, hold on, never mind. That's a technical thing on my end. Nothing. Keep going.
Okay. So on the side of the second homer team from the AFC, I kind of have to go Broncos. By the numbers, it looks like Denver is the number 2 team on the AFC. They've got the number 2 wide receiver by most rankings in Demaryius Thomas. On the other side, they've got Emmanuel Sanders ranking number 12. ESPN has C.J. Anderson, the running back, ranked as high as number 6, and the quarterback obviously cannot be overlooked. Peyton Manning is ranked number 4. Maybe you haven't heard of him.
I have not, sir.
He's pretty solid.
All right.
He's getting up in age, so I don't know that we can necessarily count on the same numbers that we were looking at a couple years ago, but you never really know. The tight end position, Owen Daniels is a quality tight end. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be putting up the huge numbers like Julius Thomas was last year. But on the defensive side of the ball, Wade Phillips is the new defensive coordinator, though. He has changed it up from a 4-3 to a 3-4. We've brought in extra pass rush. We've got, all pros in the secondary. We've got Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware in the pass rush. And I really expect big things from the defense. And I think all other things aside, Homer thing aside, obviously I'm a Broncos fan. But I expect big things out of the defense this year.
I thought you said you didn't.
So you said you struggled with it. So what? So it sounds like there was a 2A or a number 3 person that could have also replaced the Broncos.
There really was. I really was looking for a reason to replace the Broncos at number 2. Just specifically because I didn't want to be the homer. I didn't want to pick the Broncos because I'm sitting here wearing an orange jersey. But the numbers seemed to point towards the Broncos no matter how I worked it. There was a couple other teams I liked, and I guess 2B would be the Colts. The Colts have in my opinion, the best quarterback in the league. I think Andrew Luck is going to be just storming through the league for many years to come. The dude is absolutely amazing. I love watching him. He puts up tremendous numbers, except for one game a year, which Tarnell knows real good. But I think Andrew Luck as a quarterback is absolutely amazing. I think a lot of people had Aaron Rodgers ranked number 1 before the Jordy Nelson injury. The Jordy Nelson injury, I think, knocked Aaron Rodgers to number 2, so I think that only adds to the consensus of Andrew Luck being number 1. Wide receivers, T.Y. Hilton is amazing. He's a young guy. He's crazy fast. He's got great hands. He's an amazing threat. And they've added Andre Johnson.
Yeah.
Andre Johnson getting up in years. But I think he's now in a situation that is going to be real favorable for him because I don't necessarily think he's drawing the number 1 coverage. I think the best coverage is going over there to T.Y., and I think Andre Johnson is now going to find himself in a situation where he's still got an amazing skill set, and he's no longer facing the number 1 cornerback, and he's no longer facing double teams. So I like Andre Johnson. I think
He
a
will
lot of
become
balls
Randy
are going
Moss.
his way.
He will be Randy Moss on the Patriots.
Yeah, I
That's
think a
where he's
lot
gonna
of
be.
balls are going his way.
Also, you forget they had added Frank Gore to the mix.
Well, I didn't forget, but my problem with Frank Gore is he's getting up there in years. He's past that 30-year threshold, and it's tough for me to put too much stock into how Frank Gore looks. I think he can still pound the ball. Don't get me wrong. I think he's still going to be.
He'll be good enough pressure for relief for Andrew Luck. It'll help keep defense honest enough, and that's a good thing for that offense overall.
Yeah.
Now the defense, their defense is so-so, but I think with their offense, they'll be able to be decent enough. They'll be solid enough. They
Yeah,
just need to not
and
get blown out.
I think it becomes a conversation of, you know, their football quality versus their fantasy quality, because I think their football quality is great, but I think fantasy-wise, I think they fall a little short at running back because they got a running back that's 32 years old. They've got some guys behind him that aren't necessarily up to par. You know, everybody can prove
Wait,
themselves.
who else was on there? Because I know they had was it Donald Brown, but that don't know if he's still.
He's went to the Chargers.
Yeah, that's right.
Chargers.
That's right, Chargers.
They got
It was
Dan
Mark Bradshaw.
Aaron.
They had like guys you were like,
Oh,
who
the
hell?
rookie, yeah. They've got that rookie, not Bradshaw, sorry. They've got this rookie, Josh Robinson, that I was looking at that has a lot of promise. But, I mean, it's really hard to put too much weight into that for the preseason because who knows. But
I mean, there was no standout running back. There was just a guy that would kind of get a little bit better than the last guy towards the end of the year last year. But, I mean, no one was, like, solid.
Yeah, they had, Vic Ballard, Dan Herron, and, I mean, the guys did okay from a football standpoint. From a fantasy standpoint, I would stay away from them. So it's not somebody you really want to even target in your draft. But Josh Robinson, if you're looking for rookies, maybe. You know, he's looked really good in the first couple preseason games, and I wouldn't necessarily overlook him. Their defense on the Colts.
They're very similar to Green Bay, though. They're like a pass-first team, so.
Yeah, they're supplementing that with the run, and I think Gore's going to be great there from a football standpoint.
Right,
on the AFC side, as a fan of the AFC, I'm more than a little nervous about what they're bringing to the table.
They leaned on him a lot to like carry the team on his back, and that's not going to be the case because clearly Andrew Luck has the team on his back, on that team. So people like Johnson. See, the problem with Johnson in Houston, there was never ever another aerial threat there. So teams knew go to Johnson. I mean, they never really had anyone that you could say, oh, we got to cover, to spread the defense. They could double him all game. And it's just different now. So I think both of those guys made a good move going to Indianapolis.
Yeah, and I agree. And I would not be surprised from a fantasy standpoint to see them as, the number 2 team fantasy-wise. But going into the draft, it's hard to ignore Denver and the offensive potential there.
Right.
Yeah, I think that Houston has a better squad even going into the draft, better than Denver. I think Denver's huge issue is going to be Peyton Manning and what he's going to do. It's just going to be a huge question mark, his health and his age. We'll have to see.
So you like Hoyer?
No. Houston. I said Houston.
I'm like, wait a minute.
I said,
oh, yeah.
I'm in Indy.
Hoyer. I mean, you saw me in Cleveland.
Okay. At least I agree with you there. You bring up
Houston,
and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Indy, and I think Indy has the firepower for this exercise. I think Houston. Why do I keep saying Houston? Indy has the firepower. Yeah, firepower that will deep throw spot. And you know what? A team that you're really high on is Miami, and I think Miami can push for that number 2 spot. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is going to be that quarterback that people are going to be like, oh my God. I alluded to it last week. What did he have? 15 out of 16 or 16 out of 17 games, double figures fantasy points. Lamar Miller is going to be a stud running back. Kenny Stills, Greg Jennings, Javaris Landry is someone to look out for PPR. He's going to get 80, 90 catches. Jordan Cameron at tight end. These are all players that are going to serve as like a B+ when it comes to rating. And their defense with Ndamukong Suh is going to be pretty awesome defense to watch. So I think Miami is going to be right there with Indy, and then Denver's going to be trailing behind those two, I think.
Yeah, and I had Miami as, I guess, my number 4 team going into this. My thing with them is they didn't really have any top-notch talent. All of their talent is great, but it's kind of that B level. Lamar Miller's not a top 10 guy. Tannehill's, he's not really being looked at as a top 5 guy. I think that history may prove that he should have been looked at that way, but he's not being really looked at that way. The wide receiver, same deal. Their defense was ranked 12, I believe, on the list. So they were somebody that I looked at, but they were the very top edge of just, really solid all around, but nothing really stood out. So from a fantasy standpoint, I think they're kind of taking a hit because they're all kind of equally good. There's nobody really better than anybody else on that team necessarily.
And, I mean, why are we not even mentioning New England? I mean, New England has Tom Brady. I was in a mock draft last week, and I picked up Tom Brady as my very last pick. How in the world does that happen? Tom Brady, Gronkowski, I mean, the list goes on. LeGarrette Blount, he blew up and had double-digit touchdowns last year. I mean, he had close to 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards rushing. Brandon LaFell, Julian Edelman is a PPR beast. I mean that's another team to look at. AFC's got they got a lot of teams that are going to be up there.
Well, I would say that New England really suffers just because they're New England. I mean, I think Bill Belichick just hates your fantasy team. He doesn't really focus on any one guy. He's a system guy, and he's going to beat the ball around. So I think when it comes to a conversation like this, it's tough to look at New England just because they've got a lot of threats, and they're not afraid to use them, and they're not really trying to focus on any one guy.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, good, gentlemen. Excellent analysis on this. Be throwing more stuff like this your way all year long.
Bring it.
Oh, I will bring it, sir. All right, well, I think that brings us to a close here for this week on Fantasy Football Fiesta. Tune in every week about 8 on Tuesday Pacific time. We're live for the West Coast. Little housekeeping things. Don't forget to check us out on fantasyfootballfiesta.com. If you plan on shopping at Amazon and all, and let's be honest, who doesn't? We all do. Go ahead and use our link. Help us out. Give us some beer money. Help us make this stuff a little bit awesomer. And, yeah, we're going to shop anyways, and they give us a little kickback, and that'll be good. So on YouTube, we got a little tip jar there. We got a little fan funding. We do this on our own, out of our own pockets. No one's paying us. We're not sponsored by anybody. So go ahead and hook us up there if you like us, which, I mean, come on, how could you not? It's us. Pretty damn amazing. That past hour, you got a football fantasy goodness. And we are signing off here for Tuesday night. Thank you for watching. We love you all, internet, and see you next week.